Thank you, Josh. So we just wrapped up our series last week on Fall of the Hero. We had a chance to talk about Paul and King Saul and Adam and Thomas and just experience their lives, experience their failings and their mistake, but then also see how we can learn from those failings, no mistakes, see how we can grow beyond those issues. And so if you missed any of that and you want to get caught up with that, you can find the videos on Facebook or on our church website and get reconnected and get connected to those and go on from there. But it was a great opportunity to see that a lot of people struggle and a lot of people go through things, which leads us right into the series that we're going to do for part of this month. And so we're going to be doing a series called The Struggle. Okay, called The Struggle. And it's just a 3-part series, and we're going to focus on 3 things. The first part, we're going to talk about being worn down. And that's what we're going to be talking about today, being worn down. You can go back a second. And then we're going to talk about when we fall down, and I fell down, and what do I do with that? So worn down and broken down, and I fell down, and now what do I do? And then we're going to end it talking about standing up, and in the middle of all the stuff that we deal with and go through, that we have the opportunity in Christ to stand up and to stand strong in those things. And so today we're going to talk about being worn down and dealing with that. And so there's a quote that I want to read that comes from Charles Stanley. Okay, and the quote says this. It says, "We can be tired, weary, and emotionally distraught. But after spending time alone with God, we find that He injects into our bodies energy, power, and strength." Okay? And so we're going to talk about this idea of being worn down. Being worn down. But I don't want to end today on this like we're all worn down and we're all going to walk out of here all worn out or whatever. Nor do I want to end next week on we've all fallen down and now we're all going to walk out of here just miserable and feeling shameful, whatever. I don't want to end that way. So even though the series is building towards a point of victory and success, whatever, in each message, we clearly want to not just address the problem, but also look at the positives and look at what we need to do to get beyond and get through these things. So we're going to talk about being worn down, but we're also going to talk about being getting built back up, okay? And that God will build us up and can build us up. And then we're going to look at how this impacts us, the life lessons that we can learn from this and walk away with this as we talk about the struggle. And so let's start with being worn down. I'm not going to ask for a show of hands, okay, of how many people feel worn down or feel this way. I think of there's a gift that's been going around, and it's been going around a couple years now, so they just keep changing the years. But it's a person that was like running down a hill, and they just start tumbling, and they're just like, I mean, just this steep hill, and they're just tumbling down this hill, and it says, 2019, look like this. Hopefully 2020 will be better. But I remember when it said 2017 looked like this, and I hope that 2018 will be better. And some of us, we look at our lives, and it just feels like this just perpetual just tumbling down a hill. And we look back, and some of us might say, oh, yesterday was tough. Or we'll look back and say, man, last month was really difficult. I hope this month is easier. And so some of us, we go through these seasons, we go through these periods where we feel worn out, where we feel worn down. And for different reasons. Genesis 18:12, we see a piece of the story of Sarah and Abraham. It says, "So Sarah laughed to herself, saying, 'After I am worn out, and my Lord is old, shall I have pleasure?'" After I am worn out, and my Lord is old, shall I have pleasure? See, God came to Sarah and said, listen, you're going to have a child. And Sarah's response is like, whoa, time out. I'm old. I'm tired. I'm done. How in the world is this going to happen? Like, my body don't work like it used to. This isn't going to happen. I'm not having any kids. Like this got to stop. And yet how often do we get in positions like that, in times like that, where we look at ourselves and say, okay, I've done enough, or I'm done now. You want to know something interesting is that you can retire from a career. You can retire from employment, okay? But there is no retiring from serving God. Now, you may transition, and God may use you in different ways than you did before, okay? I could do things at 15 that I can't do today. I can do things today that I won't be able to do 20 years from now. It doesn't mean that God doesn't transition us into different things, but the truth is that as long as I draw breath, I have a calling to serve God. As long as I am breathing, as long as I am functioning, as long as I'm alive, I have a calling to serve him. I have a calling to show other people his love. No matter what. It doesn't matter whether I'm standing, on a stage in front of people. It doesn't matter whether I'm somewhere out. It doesn't matter where I'm at. It doesn't matter where I am in my life. As long as I am breathing, I am called to serve and to share who he is with others. David does a really good job of presenting this worn out thing, because David had some serious moments of being worn out. When King Saul, who we talked about a few weeks ago, when King Saul was after him and chasing after him, his life was threatened and he was running from place to place. When he was dealing with his own sin and his own issues, and there were several moments. And so I want to look at a couple of verses, because David just does a great job, and the book of Psalms does a great job at times of putting this out there. If you really want to see a lot of that there, go read the book of Lamentations, because the whole book is just lamenting. And if you don't know what that is, don't go and read it, because it can be depressing if you read it with the wrong mindset and the wrong attitude. But look what he says. He says, I am feeble and crushed. I groan because of the tumult of my heart. I am feeble and crushed. Psalm 69:3, I am weary with crying. My throat is parched. My eyes fail while I wait for God. I mean, this isn't not nice and pretty. It's not even a nice and pretty picture. David also mentions, he talked about his bones literally aching from all the stress and the chaos and the brokenness and all the junk that he's feeling. His body literally is aching. He talks about this idea of being worn down, being run down. Matthew 26:38. Okay, you say, well, these are just people. Well, guess what? Let's look at Jesus. Let's look at the red letter words. Let's look at Jesus' own words. Okay, he's walking into the garden with his disciples, and he says to them, my soul is very sorrowful, even to death. Remain here and watch with me. He's getting ready to go into the garden and to begin to prepare and to begin to experience the most horrific thing anyone's ever experienced. He is about to experience the crucifixion. The Bible says that he that knew no sin became sin. He's about to take on all of this stuff, all of my junk, all of your junk. And you hear him say, my soul is very sorrowful, even to death. You begin to see the struggle. You begin to see, as he's in the garden, he cries out, God, is there any other way? Dad, is there any other way? Do I really have to go through this? Is there any other way? The Bible says that he began to sway, began to bleed. It looked like the Bible talks about it, describes it as in droplets of blood, like he was sweating blood. And the scary thing, when you look at that and say, oh, well, that's just crazy. Oh, that's just the Bible. It's just fantasy. No, there's actually a physical condition that's called hematidrosis, and it's rare. It does not happen very often. It only happens when somebody is under extreme, when I mean extreme stress and duress, that this happens. And what happens is that all the pressure in the body, all the pressure that's building up in somebody, what happens is that the blood vessels in your face, they start to bust. And as they bust, the blood will get into your pores, and then as you're sweating, okay, or in women's world, as you're glistening, okay, I wanted to correct that, okay, guys, as we're sweating, women, as you're glistening, the blood will mix in and it'll look like you're sweating blood. I had an opportunity when we were in youth ministry, when I was in youth, we would go to this retreat every couple of years, or every year, for a few years we went to the same retreat for a winter retreat, and we went there. It was a great time and all, and we were on our way back from the retreats and got home, and we got the phone call that apparently this really, really, really bad stomach bug had showed up at the retreat center, and had spread through or whatever. And so it turned out, a bunch of us ended up getting sick or whatever. And I had gotten really, really sick, like violently ill. And I remember I spent hours just holding on to that, porcelain throne, and just hours there. I mean, to the point where I'm like, there was nothing left in intestines had come out. I mean, everything. There was nothing left in me to come out at all. And finally, after several hours of this, literally it was terrible. Okay? It was terrible. And I am not somebody, like, I don't, I may get nauseous at times, whatever, but I don't throw, I've only thrown up a handful of times in my entire life. That just doesn't happen. And I mean, it was bad. And I finally had enough, and I was finally done. I'm like, there's nothing left in me. There's nothing more, whatever. I remember standing up, and I was in my parents' bathroom, and I looked in the mirror, and my entire face was speckled. And I'm like, what in the world? It was like red, and I'm like, what's going on? And so I leaned in to look up close, and I had all these tiny dots, red dots. My entire face was covered in them. And I was like, oh my goodness, what in the world just happened to me? And what I realized is because of all the pressure in my body dealing with this illness and all the pressure, that all the blood had literally begun to bust all through my face. Now, it didn't come out in sweat, but that's what had happened. And I'm thinking about this, and I'm thinking about this moment with Jesus, and I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm like, that was terrible for me. That was horrific for me. And this was even worse. This was even worse. And so even we see Jesus at times get tired. We see Jesus needing time to go off and to recharge, needing time to reset and from all the people and all that he's pouring out, and even he needs some time. But what happens is that this is where we go wrong, is that when I look to my circumstances, when I look to the circumstances and the situations around me, it's so easy to become discouraged, defeated, and worn out. When I keep looking at the stuff, it's really easy to get that way. I was before I met Jen, and before we got into a relationship, I was in a relationship with a girl from college, and we had, we had planned on getting married and all this, and it all came crumbling down. And I remember one day as I was trying to process through all of this and trying to, okay, I got to, survive this, and I got stuff to do, and I got life to live, and whatever. And she showed up at a place I was working, and wanted to have a conversation. I was not in a place to have a conversation. Like, listen, you ended the relationship. I need my space. Like, you need to leave me alone, whatever. And we got into an argument, and it just wasn't good. And I remember I got into my car, and my first reaction was what, right? To put like the happiest music on, right? Because that's what we do. The first reaction is like, oh, I want something that's really cheerful. Like, let me go see if I can find some like cute like Disney songs or some like children's song. That's what I want to do. No, my first reaction was to put the angriest, the most depressed, whatever, the worst song I could find that encompassed all my feelings. Threw that on, put it on repeat, and got in my car and took off. Okay, literally as fast as I could go, just to get out of town, just to drive around, just angry and frustrated. I mean, I was driving, I didn't even care. I'm like, if a cop pulls me over, I might just make the news because I may just not stop. You know what? And if I take a turn and it's too tight and too sharp and I don't make it, hey, I was just mad and I'm angry and what do? When we're going through stuff, it's so easy for us to embrace that and make it worse. It's so easy for us to make it worse. We're going through a difficult time, and instead of seeking peace and instead of moving beyond it, we just latch on to everything that's just going to keep bringing us down. So we talked about being worn down, but let's not spend any more time there. Let's jump to getting built back up, to being built up, and trusting that God doesn't want you worn down. God's desire for your life is not to be worn down. His desire for us is not for us to go through life like, oh, if I could just make it one more day. Just one more day. You said that yesterday. I know, it was terrible. Well, what about today? Just one more day. Just one more day. That's not what God called us to do. It's not the life he called for us. Isaiah 40:31 says this, "They who wait for the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings like eagles. They shall run and not be weary, and they shall walk and not faint." I was going through some stuff, and I'll share some more of this as we go on in this series. I was going through some stuff physically and had been going to doctor after doctor after doctor and all kinds of tests. And at one point I was like, I don't even think there's any more blood for you to take out of me, but here, take some more. And had been pricked and prodded and scanned and all kinds of stuff and no answers. And so it was like, all right, we're going to send you to this specialist and send you to this specialist. And so one of these days, here I am, I'm driving to go to another one of these appointments, and I'm depressed, and I'm frustrated, and I'm struggling with all this because I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. But on the same side of it, I got stuff to do. And so I'm driving, and I'm driving, and I take I go past this turn, and as soon as you get past the turn, this clearing opens up, and there was a field there, and as soon as I make that turn, I look out, and I see this golden eagle comes flying out from the tree, and literally begins flying along the road, and so I'm driving my car, and I'm looking, and this eagle is maybe 30, 40 feet from me, and it's just flying right along with the car. And it flew with me probably for about half a mile until the field ended, and then it flew off and went above the trees. And as it's flying by, this verse came to mind. And here I'm in the car, and I'm just like, God, I'm so tired. God, I'm sick of this. God, why? And I'm dealing with all of this, and I watch this eagle fly by, and this verse comes to me. They that wait on the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings like eagles. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not faint. And so I said, well, I want to look at this. I want to go back and I want to look at this verse. And so I went back and I started reading this verse. And I realized something, that I've been seeing it wrong, that I've been understanding it wrong, that there's so much more to this verse than what we just look at. The Hebrew word in this verse that's used in this word, all right, the word that's used is kavah, okay? And kavah has two definitions or two meanings. One is literal and one is a figurative. But most of the time when we look at this verse, we take the figurative meaning. Okay? Most of the time we take the figurative meaning. That's the one that we know. That's the one that we tend to look at, and we tend to know that the figurative meaning of waiting on the Lord means to trust him, to expect him to do something. And so we think about waiting, and it kind of looks, it kind of looks like this, like, oh, those that wait on the Lord. And so what do? We sit down, we're like, all right, God, we got some stuff going on, so I'm just gonna wait. You're gonna take care of that now, God, right? We got that issue. Yeah, it's okay. I'm gonna wait. You're gonna take care of it. You gonna take care of it yet? No, not yet. Still okay. I know the pastor preached on the patience thing, calmly without complaint. I'm not complaining. I'm just asking, when are you gonna take care of it? But it's not a complaint. I'm not complaining about things. I'm just asking today. No, okay. And this is what we do. We think that means waiting. That's what it means to wait on the Lord, is to just sit there and be like, hey, God, I'm waiting on you. Are you going to do? I'm still waiting. I'm still worn out. I'm still tired. I'm not flying like no eagles. I'm waiting. When are you going to do? And that's what we think of. But see, when you look at the literal meaning of the word, it brings a whole new revelation regarding this verse, okay? Because the word wait, kavah, also means something different. It also means to bind together. It also means to bind together. So now it totally changes the way we see that verse. It totally changes everything when it says, those that wait on the Lord, those that are bound together in the Lord, will renew their strength. Ecclesiastes 4:12 says this, and if one can overpower him who is alone, two can resist him. A cord of 3 strands is not quickly torn apart. So you may be wondering, what in the world is he walking around with that thing hanging out of his back pocket? Maybe you didn't look. It's okay. Okay? But when we look at rope, and rope is braided together, and we find that the more that's braided together, the stronger that it is. Okay, the stronger, the more that it can hold, the more that it can last, the more that it can take before it breaks. But what happens is when you start to take a rope and you start to pull it apart into its pieces, okay, and you start to take it apart in its pieces, and we'll even, here we go, right here, look at this. And you pull it down, I don't even know if you can all see it, and you pull it down to its individual fibers, you find that where this can handle something, that together it can handle something, well, you pull it down to its individual fibers, and guess what you find out? It can't take a whole lot. I don't want this holding me up. But this is what we do. But the Bible says those that wait on the Lord, those that are bound to him, those that are interwoven, that God is interwoven in your life, that all that he is saturating and filling your life, those are the ones that will mount up with wings like eagles. Those are the ones that will run or walk and not get weary. Those are the ones. So no, it's not about me sitting here going, hey, God, you going to take care of this yet? I'm waiting. Word says to wait. Still waiting. No, it's not about that. It's not a passive relationship. A relationship with God, if I want to see myself move beyond being worn, I need to function in an active relationship with God. You say, well, wait a minute, that doesn't make sense. I'm tired. Yes, but you're telling me that means I need to do more. And I need to do, but I'm tired. You're right, but you need to do. Sitting back and waiting like it's just going to magically happen isn't going to work. We need to be actively pursuing a relationship with him. We need to be actively building on a relationship with him. If you want to see God move in your life the way that he says that he's going to, you've got to be a part of that. We've got to be actively seeking him. So let's talk about the life lessons. Let's talk about what we can pull away from this. Philippians chapter 4, verse 11 says this, not that I am speaking of being in need, for I have learned in whatever situation I am to be content. This is one of my favorite, I know I say that all the time, but this really is one of my favorite passages, my favorite verses in all of Scripture. Okay? I have learned in whatever situation to be content. The book of Philippians is considered one of the happiest books in all of the Bible. Okay? And Paul is writing this with Timothy. He's writing this letter to the church in Philippi, and he's writing this letter together. The two of them are putting this together and sending it out. And you want to know something interesting about it? Is Paul is writing this in prison. He is writing this with a sentence of death over his head. And yet, it's considered one of the happiest books in the Bible. One of the most joyful books in the Bible. It's so positive. And Paul is just putting all this positive and all this great stuff in there. How is that possible? Well, he says it. I have learned not I've waited, not I've sat, whatever. I have learned. He has learned through his life. He has learned through his experience. He has learned to bind himself and to be bound and interwoven with God. And so he's learned that whatever he goes through, whatever situation he's in, he is content. He is satisfied. Not in the situation, but in Jesus Christ. The Bible doesn't say you're going to go through difficult times and you'll be okay with those difficult times. You're going to go through them. But your satisfaction, your joy, your content, that doesn't come from the situation. It comes from God. Hebrews 12, 1-2 says this, let us run with endurance. I'm already tired. I read that verse and I'm like, let us run with endurance the race that is set before us, fixing our eyes on Jesus, the author and perfecter of faith, who for the joy set before him endured the cross. Fixing our eyes on Jesus, what do? Let us run with endurance. You want to know the problem? Many of us, we can't run. We can barely walk, let alone run. Many of us don't have endurance. A buddy of mine is running, and he's planning and he's working on running in a marathon to raise money because him and his wife have been missionaries for a while, and God has just opened the doors for them to go to Brazil and be missionaries down in Brazil. And so he's running a marathon to help raise support and awareness for their ministry. And he's training for this marathon. The crazy thing is that 13 years ago, okay, he's like 6'4", whatever. 13 years ago, he weighed like 350 some pounds. And over the years, he's worked hard and he's lost weight, and now he's training for this marathon. He's out there running, and what is he doing? He's building his endurance. He's building his ability to withstand the mile after mile, the step after step. So he started out with a little bit, and he keeps adding, and the last time, I saw what he was doing, he was going out and he was running he was running 22 miles. As he prepared for the 26, and he keeps pushing himself and building his endurance. The problem is that we have a whole lot of Christians that we have no endurance. So when we go out and try to run, you know what it looks like? It's like 3 steps and we're, hold on, I'll catch up. Like that's the problem, is that we don't have the endurance. But look what it says. Let us run with endurance the race that is set before us, fixing our eyes on Jesus. But way too many of us don't put our eyes on him. We put our eyes on the circumstances, and then we wonder why we're winded. We wonder why we're tired. We wonder why we can't get through this. We wonder why things don't change. We wonder why we don't grow. Well, you know why we don't? Because we're not focused on Him. Because our eyes and our attention are not on Him. And when they're not on Him, it's going to continue to happen. When I am worn down, okay, when I am worn down, I must decide. I have to make a choice where to turn my focus. Where to turn my focus. Do I trust my situations? Or do I trust Him? When I typed this up and put that up last night, I didn't like this one. It bothered me. This morning, it was easier to read at second service. First service, I did not want to read that second line. Do I trust God? Or am I trusting these situations and looking at these things and you say, well, yeah, I trust God. No, you don't. Because if we truly trusted Him, we would experience the ability to run with endurance. When I'm getting beat up and worn out, I say, I just can't anymore. There's something very telling in that phrase. Notice, because we've all said things similar to that. I just can't anymore. You couldn't from the beginning. You can't. He can. You can't. You're right. You can't. And you're not supposed to. He can. Just a reminder, we read this, is that a cord of 3 strands is not quickly torn apart. There is something that happens when we're willing to come together. There's something that is empowering when myself and someone else and God, and we come together and we bring things together. And we always use this for the wedding thing, like, you know, a husband, the wife, and God, and they're the 3 cords of strand. And so this verse is often used around wedding time. But listen, this is not just a wedding verse. This is a verse for all of us. We are meant to do this together. We are not meant to do this alone. In a couple of weeks, Lord, it's coming real soon. In a couple of weeks, we'll be getting ready to give out 200 some boxes of food for families that are in need. And right after that's done, we'll be turning around and getting ready to give out thousands and thousands and thousands of toys. But that doesn't happen because 2 or 3 people decide they're going to do this. It happens because tons of people get together to make this thing do it and make it work. When we do the toys, listen, it's not just us. We host it here, but we have there are companies all around our community that are raising the money for it. That are collecting toys for it before it ever gets here. There are people that are out there already putting work and energy and effort to getting things out there so that we can turn around and bless our community. We're not meant to do this alone. We're not meant to do this by ourselves. We have to recognize something, that when you're feeling worn and you're feeling tired, one of the best things that you can do is to go talk to somebody about it. Is to go find somebody that you can talk to, somebody that you can share with, somebody can come alongside you. And we'll all come up with this excuse, I don't want to bother nobody. I don't want to trouble anybody. Nobody gonna talk to me anyway. It is what it is. I was blessed. Somebody had this shirt, and when I said it is what it is in one of our sermons not too long ago, and they went, oh my goodness, I think I have that shirt. So they went and found it, and they gave it to me, and I was like, this is perfect. I hate this phrase, okay? Because it's not, it is what it is. God's plan for you is far beyond it is what it is. Well, that's just the way the way it is. That's just the way I am. Nonsense. God has a plan for you beyond that, but we have to realize something. It's not just you by yourself. We are a community, and we have a God that cares for us. And when you bring those 3 strands together and you bind those things together, guess what happens? We experience the fullness of God. Isaiah 40:31 says, they that wait, they that bind themselves to the Lord will renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings like eagles. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not faint. There are people in this room that you're worn out. Right now, there are people in this room that you are worn out. And we need to get past this. And the way we're going to do this today and begin that process today is that I'm going to challenge you. If you're in this room right now and you feel worn out,